We're in the middle of Oscar season and there's always arguments about films that got snubbed, those that deserve to win, or those that don't. Here's my personal favorites. I've got 15 Best Picture nominees, and they're as follows in alphabetical order. A Different Man, All We Imagine as Light, Anora, The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, Flow, How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies, Hundreds of Beavers, Memoir of a Snail, Nickel Boys, No Other Land, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, The Substance, There's Still Tomorrow, and Wicked. The following films have still not premiered here in Norway, so unfortunately I haven't seen them and they will not appear on the list, sorry. If you just want to see the ranking of the best films of the year, with my arguments and winner, they're at the end of this video, check the timestamp. And there's a bunch of films with a 2023 date on IMDb, but they only had festival premieres abroad, without a worldwide release until 2024, so they are in. I've got 6 nominees for the above the line categories. Best Director, Denis Villeneuve, Dune Part 2. He was snubbed again at the Oscars, but obviously belongs in this club. The sequel is as impressive as the first one. Brady Corbet, The Brutalist, $10 million budget and he creates a grandiose epic, a director's achievement. Ramel Ross, Nickel Boys, debut feature film with a creative solution, doing a film in the first person perspective, but he makes us so invested in the story and the choice is not done as a gimmick. Sean Baker, Anora, I already love his films and he knocked it out of the park here. Carly Fargeau, The Substance. She's so creative and if you see all the behind the scenes footage, she's just so into it. She gets her hands dirty and does so much work by herself. And Mike Cheslick, Hundreds of Beavers. I'm gonna talk more about this film later on, it's quite crazy. An honorable mention, Mohamed Rasulov for The Seed of the Sacred Fig. A brave filmmaker who even faces a prison sentence for it back home and had to flee the country simply because of his demasking in the film. There's so many visions and directorial achievements in this lineup, but my personal favorite is Brady Corbet. The movie is a classic by now. Best Actress, Helga Guren for Lovable. She's absolutely fantastic in this film. She won Best Actress at Karlovy Vary Film Festival. It's a very emotional and realistic performance. She's a flawed human being trying to balance being a mother and trying to establish herself as an artist, while being frustrated at her husband, not realizing that she might be the culprit after all. Demi Moore, The Substance. Mikey Madison, Anora. Paola Cortellesi for There's Still Tomorrow, an Italian drama with an amazing lead. Cynthia Erivo for Wicked. Margaret Qualley is in the movie almost just as long as Demi Moore, like a couple minutes less, and is an active protagonist as well, so she squeezes in. I want to give 3 honorable mentions though, since it's a tough category, and that is Saoirse Ronan, who was amazing in The Outrun, Nicole Kidman in Baby Girl, and Sohaila Golestani in The Seed of the Sacred Fig. Back when I watched The Substance in a film festival last year, it already cemented itself as my favorite female performance of the year, and I assumed that Demi Moore would be completely ignored and that the film would possibly be recognized in the awards season only for its makeup, so I'm tremendously happy she is getting the recognition for her role in The Substance. It's a tour de force performance. Best Actor, I think there's some category fraud going on at the Oscars, so I have Kieran Culkin, A Real Pain, in the lead. And yes, he deserves the nomination. That performance really resonated with me, especially since I know someone just like that, and Kieran nailed every mannerism, movement and dialogue. It was like seeing an American version of that friend of mine. But Kieran is not the only great performance in the mix. And a double nomination for Sebastian Stan this year for The Apprentice and A Different Man. 2 very different characters and 2 very complicated performances. Sebastian has the acting chops and takes his role seriously. Ray Fiennes for Conclave. Adrian Brody. I had mixed feelings about A Complete Unknown, so it's not going to pop up a lot here. But Timothée Chalamet did a thorough job as Bob Dylan. He made it in. An honorable mention goes to Colman Domingo for Sing Sing. Adrian Brody is the winner here as the amazing Hungarian architect in The Brutalist. Best Supporting Actor. Luckily, even though I don't have Colman Domingo in my lineup, I have to add in Clarence Macklin for Sing Sing. That was a terrific performance. Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice. Chris Hemsworth for Furiosa. It might be an odd nomination, but I don't think we should shy away from roles like this. He had a lot of fun in this role, created a unique character, and pretty much carried the film. Guy Pearce for The Brutalist. Adam Pearson for A Different Man. Such a heartwarming character. Jack Haven, I Saw the TV Glow. The Oscars nominated Carla Sofia Gascon as the first transgender actress in Emilia Perez, a movie I find to be messy and mediocre. In the same year you have Jack Haven, formerly Bridget Lundy Payne, who gets completely overlooked. If the Academy wanted to highlight everyone who falls under the transgender umbrella, they should have nominated the non-binary Jack Haven, who is terrific in I Saw the TV Glow. Honorary mentions to Jesse Plemons for Civil War, that was a haunting performance, as well as Edward Norton as Pete Seeger for A Complete Unknown. There was something haunting about Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn. He kills it in his mentor role in a story about the uprising of an antagonistic force of the US, and being a homosexual he creates an interesting allure, especially how fixated he is on Donald. Best Supporting Actress, Trine Dyrholm, the girl with the needle. Incredibly chilling performance by the actress from Denmark. Ariana Grande, Wicked. Anjani Ellis-Taylor for Nickel Boys. That is a supporting performance. She doesn't appear as a co-lead, but pops up every now and then and steals the show. Masa Rostami for The Seed of the Sacred Fig. Danielle Deadwyler for The Piano Lesson. And Joan Chen for Didi. Also an honorary mention to Setara Maleki for The Seed of the Sacred Fig. My award goes to the one that completely surprised me. I did not care for Wicked before the film came. It was only when the reviews came in and people spoke highly of it that I became curious. Ariana Grande in acting, but she completely won me over. It's like a role she was preparing for since she was a child. I'm giving her my personal Oscar. Best Original Screenplay, Dreams. Dag Johan Haugerud is perhaps the best writer in Norway, and this one details a teenage girl who falls in love with her teacher. To preserve her feelings, she documents her emotions and experiences in writing. Her mother and grandmother end up reading these intimate writings. They are both horrified by it, but they find themselves enthralled in the powerful writing and story. The Seed of the Sacred Fig. The Brutalist, Anora, A Different Man, and The Substance. Honorary mention to Yorgos Lanthimos' Kinds of Kindness. With its interesting style and format, it reminds me a little bit of his earlier works, but The Substance is an easy winner here for me, although all of these screenplays are fabulous. Best Adapted Screenplay, Nickel Boys, Dune Part 2, Conclave, which has such a tight script. I didn't nominate it for Best Picture, it was barely left out, but its stellar dialogue earns it a spot here. Sing Sing and The Room Next Door, Almodovar's English language full-length debut. And the sixth nominee is The Count of Monte Cristo. This is an amazing French film. I know that France selected Emilia Perez to represent them at the Oscars, and it was a good decision in terms of what the Academy would respond to and the awards buzz, especially after Cannes. But in terms of movie quality, this outshines Emilia Perez in every way. An epic blockbuster that does a great job adapting one of my favorite novels. However, in screenplay, I'll give it to the political thriller that is Conclave. I don't think Conclave has a very lasting impression for years to come, but it's incredibly solid and manages to turn a slightly boring situation to an engaging slow thriller. You feel like people are lied to and stabbed in the back. This is a world of deceit, and you can tie it to political corruption in other elections too. Great character gallery and dialogues in between them. Best Animated Feature, we've got 5 nominees with various styles. Flow, which proves that you don't have to have realistic animals like in Mufasa to have an amazing film. Memoir of a Snail, The Wild Robot, Look Back, and The Peasants, which technically is a 2023 film, but it didn't have a wide release until 2024. I mentioned in my last year's video that it could pop up in the next year's video. It's a Polish film with that same all paint style animation as Loving Vincent. Honorary mention to Wallace and Gromit. I think there are 3 amazing films here: Flow, Memoir of a Snail, and The Wild Robot. But the one that takes the top spot for me is Memoir of a Snail. Best International Film. There's no point in doing this since all of these films are in my Best Picture lineup, but just to reiterate, How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies from Thailand. We have Flow from Latvia, There's Still Tomorrow from Italy, The Seed of the Sacred Fig from Germany, and even though No Other Land was not a submission by Palestine, and I guess it would fall between various countries, for instance, Norway funded a lot of that film, but it's a Palestine film. It's after all a documentary shot entirely in the West Bank by a Palestinian documentarist. So I am giving Palestine a nomination for this one, even though they didn't submit it for the Oscars. And the winner is Germany for The Seed of the Sacred Fig. Best Documentary, No Other Land, Ibelin, Norway's incredibly touching documentary about Mats, a Norwegian gamer who died of a muscular disease at the age of 25. His parents mourned what they thought had been a lonely life when they started receiving messages from online friends, people from World of Warcraft, a virtual world where he was able to be free from his chains. This is a tearjerker. Grand Theft Hamlet, another documentary that also takes place in a video game, although this one is entirely shot within Grand Theft Auto, with a group of people who want to set up Shakespeare's Hamlet within the video game. Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger, a well-paced and very informative documentary completely narrated by Martin Scorsese, who shares passionately about the films by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. It contains a lot of analysis, a lot of behind-the-scenes trivia, passionate thoughts, but also the criticism. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, which was also very touching. It finds a balance between his movies and his work in the charitable organization finding a cure for paralysis. Honorary mention to Daughters. As much as I want to give it to the Norwegian film Ibelin, it's definitely my second favorite of all the documentaries I saw in 2024. But it just can't beat No Other Land. Best Original Score, Dune Part 2, the Academy disqualified it, I don't. The Brutalist, it's fantastic. Challengers was snubbed at the Oscars despite winning at the Golden Globes and Critics' Choice. I have no idea what happened. Did they get sick of Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross? Did they want to highlight other composers? I think its energetic score is a definite nomination. Megalopolis. I'm not crazy, I really like that score. It evokes the musical style of Miklos Rozsa, known from Ben-Hur, El Cid and Kings of Kings. The composer for this one, Osvaldo Golijov, is a two-time Grammy winner for Best All-Pro Recording and Best Classical Contemporary Composition, and he plays his classical understanding of music with a grand orchestra, similar to the old biblical and historical epics. And the fifth nominee is The Apprentice, which also surprised me, and I've returned to that score time and time again. It seems to have taken inspiration from Giorgio Moroder's score for Scarface, and that shows. It has a slick 80s vibe to it with its very happy keyboard sounds and drum beats, but also those very haunting organs. Sometimes the melodies even remind me of A Clockwork Orange. You can smell the cocaine out of the melodies, composed by the Danish Martin Dirkov, but underneath the surface is a dark and brooding tension, kind of like those dark hums from Vangelis' score for Blade Runner. And this one teases the monster underneath the orange skin. And despite the beautiful score from The Brutalist, which is the runner-up here, I can't deny that the score is amazing in The Apprentice. The ending track of the film just highlights that the worst scandals, worst crimes, and being a hostile force on everyone, he still won. The Apprentice, which is a flawed movie, don't get me wrong, I've got tons of problems with it, but it wins original score. Best original song, kicking it off with a honorable mention, which is Kiss the Sky from The Wild Robot. It's a cute song. In the final 5 lineup, I've got Like a Bird from Sing Sing, Willingly by Anna Berg from the movie Dreams, Sick in the Head from Kneecap, and you might have noticed that I am not a fan of Emilia Perez, but I think that in the wild mess of bad songs, we have some that work, and I honestly think that the two that are highlighted like El Mal and Mi Camino are not so bad. El Mal has a cool style, although neither Carla nor Zoe Saldana perform it that well, and Mi Camino is very nonsensical in the lyrics. Apparently, Selena Gomez sings Si me caigo en la barranca, which means if I fall on the cliff. She pronounces the words a bit odd, so it seems like she says if I shit on the cliff, which is fun. But the song is sung by Selena Gomez, and she is a much better singer than an actress or a Spanish speaker. She said so herself. Mi Camino kind of feels like a Eurovision song that would be in the top 5 of the year. The chord progression and the piano melody also sells this song. Despite the lyrics, it's a song that could work very well in an instrumental version. So I have it nominated, and I also have it high on my ranking, but it's not my preferred winner. The winner is John Kayak and his Acme Applejack. Brought to you by Wayne Frank Hughes and the Seafield Monster Sextet from the awesome Hundreds of Beavers. It has so much energy. It's a genuine folk song from the woods of Wisconsin. It has much more plot relevance, with the song reappearing in different ways during the movie, both as an individual song as well as part of the score, just like La La Land's City of Stars, so it's an obvious winner of the year. Best Sound, Dune Part 2, Nickel Boys, Blitz. I was a bit let down by this. Steve McQueen is a talented director and simply decided to make a very Oscar-baited type of war movie without that auteur trademark. It does have an amazing and realistic sound design. The Substance and Hundreds of Beavers, which is a silent film, but it employs a wide variety of cartoon sounds. The Substance has an amazing soundscape, and it's a close call between that one and Dune, but I'll give it to the sci-fi spectacle. Best production design, The Count of Monte Cristo, like I said, is an expensive, huge blockbuster. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, Wicked, Dune Part 2, and Conclave. Conclave got a lot of attention for creating the Sistine Chapel, something that was done in Carol Reed's The Agony and the Ecstasy, but I was much more impressed by Wicked. Huge sets and vibrant design, especially this one.
Why don't we make circular bookshelves? What if they rotated it all in different directions so we could have him introduce Dancing Through Life on these rotating circular bookcases, and then the ladders would work independently, so at some point when you look this way, they would line up and create Z, which is Oz.
Honorary mention for production design to The Brutalist, of course, amazing sets, but also to La Chimera, which had a wide release in 2024. Best cinematography, All We Imagine as Light, The Brutalist, The Girl with the Needle, Dune Part 2, and Nickel Boys. An honorary mention to Maria. I can't help but give it to Nickel Boys. The whole thing is about the cinematography. It knows what to show in the frame and what not. After a while, we are also introduced to an interesting third-person perspective, which is relevant in the story that is told on screen. It wins the personal Oscar. Best makeup and hairstyling, A Different Man, Nosferatu, The Substance, Dune Part 2, and Beetlejuice. Honorary mention to Handling the Undead. I've been saying this since I saw it, but this is a clear winner. The body horror makeup effects in The Substance is just on another level. Best costume design, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, which unfortunately got no love this year. I mean, it's not as good as the previous one, but come on, it excels in a lot of technical categories. Wicked, Dune Part 2, Maria, and Nosferatu. Honorary mention to Gladiator 2. The costumes in Wicked were fantastic, so it wins for me. Best editing, The Brutalist, Saturday Night, Challengers, Nickel Boys, and Kinds of Kindness. Honorary mention for editing to Evil Does Not Exist from Ryosuke Hamaguchi, which was not as good as Drive My Car, but still worth seeing. And an honorable mention to Hundreds of Beavers. I love how The Brutalist was edited. It edges out Nickel Boys in my opinion. Best visual effects, Dune Part 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Twisters, I mean it had great effects, Godzilla and Kong the New Empire. Tons of work into that disaster movie. Better Man. I actually like this slightly better than A Complete Unknown. I don't think I would have nominated it for other awards, but the visual effects were stunning, and the idea of showcasing Robbie Williams' life through the monkey actually worked. Honorary mention, Alien Romulus. The effects are stellar, but there's that one thing everyone complains about. It's a spoiler, so I'm not going to mention it, but it puts it in an honorable mention. But it's no contest here, it's Dune Part 2. Best casting, this is a category that the Academy are adding to the mix next year. An important task, casting directors are finding the perfect couple for the roles, either in big productions or small, and famous stars transforming into new roles, or new talent that are discovered by a brilliant casting director. My nominees are Saturday Night. It's quite an underrated film this year. Impeccable casting for so many notable celebrities such as John Belushi and Chevy Chase. Didi gets a shout out for their casting, getting people with very little acting background, but also have Joan Chen in the mix. It's a very sweet film, by the way. If you liked 8th grade and mid-90s, you'll love this one. Anora also gets some points for their casting. Some unique choices here. Juror number 2. Now, this one hasn't got a lot of traction. Clint Eastwood's latest film, but I think it was a nice ensemble with colorful actors. Kinds of Kindness manages to use a great group of actors in a fun way in 3 different stories. I know that Saturday Night got buried, but this is a return to form for Jason Reitman. I really like this film. Amazing chemistry in the lead up to the first ever live recording of Saturday Night Live. Best Stunts, Choreography or Dance. This is a made-up category, but I think it should be included. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, Wicked, Gladiator 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Hundreds of Beavers. I would also give an honorable mention to Emilia Perez. Despite what you think of it, it's incredibly choreographed. This one is a bit tricky. Wicked is amazingly choreographed, and I would place it as a runner-up and give the award to Furiosa. It's insane what they are accomplishing here. Yes, it's not as impressive as Fury Road, but in the landscape of the films that came out in 2024, it stands out positively in its stunts and how the action sequences were choreographed. Best Picture. Now to my ranking of the 15 best films of the year. 15, All We Imagine As Light. Payal Kapadia's film, which got a lot of traction this award season, is an exploration of two nurses living in the vibrancy of Mumbai. It's a bustling Indian metropolis. These two women are on two different levels in the world of love, and it captivates us with its poetic interpretation of women in modern-day Mumbai, beautifully illustrated by a cinematic color palette. 14, There's Still Tomorrow. This is a true feminist movie. Delia is a typical housewife in post-war Italy, living with 3 children and an abusive husband. However, the arrival of a mysterious letter ignites Delia's courage to stand up to her abusive husband and imagine a better future. The film offers Italian neorealism mixed with classical melodrama about an ordinary family in a city struggling to find a balance between positive momentum unleashed by the liberation and the misery left by the war. 13. How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies. Now this is a sweet movie about a young and immature college dropout who volunteers to take care of his terminally ill grandmother in the hope of inheriting a huge chunk of her money or her house. I love the set decoration here, and gradually over the movie they will bond. The dialogue scenes are so earnest, it's easy to recognize yourself in the film with an older relative or friend, and it explores grief, selflessness, and selfishness around inheritance. It's a movie that it's easy to like, a tearjerker, as well as having a little bit of comedy in it as well. Number 12, Wicked. On my list of my most anticipated films of 2024 a year ago, this wasn't even on my radar. Definitely a surprise. And then it was a spectacular surprise. I didn't know anything from the musical, so I came in with a blank mind, and I was thoroughly surprised. Creative and massive production design, amazing world building. I already knew how talented Cynthia Erivo was, and she shows that in this film. But Ariana Grande? That was the biggest surprise. The film cements itself among many great old musicals, with amazing dance performances, but most importantly, a lot of heart and passion. The dynamic between Galinda and Elphaba, amazing. The movie is also a part 1, but unlike Across the Spider-Verse, which I loved but I hated the ending, Wicked feels more like a complete package in terms of story structure and pacing. You leave the film smiling broadly about what you've seen. Number 11, A Different Man. I've already nominated Sebastian Stan and Adam Pearson in it, so you know that I like the film. It's about an actor who goes through a radical medical procedure to transform his appearance, but his new face does not work as well as he hoped. It almost feels like a Coen Brothers or a Charlie Kaufman film at times. It has so many interesting layers to the film, highlighted by the mood and atmosphere as well as the music. It explores the main character's ego in a very cool way. Adam Pearson was a highlight as well as Sebastian Stan, also Renate Reinsve. Number 10, Dune Part 2. Technically marvelous. I still have the same problems with it as I had with the previous one, since it's very emotionally distant, hence why my favorite Villeneuve sci-fi film is Arrival, but this film just checks out all the boxes. Hans Zimmer is always great, although maybe a little bit more creative in the first part. Everything is just exceptional. Top-notch visual effects and sound design. It's a movie meant for IMAX. Number 9, Flow. Incredibly engaging and yet very simple. We're just following this cat caught in a climate collapse and befriending a lot of animals on their way. The film doesn't try too hard to be cutesy, but creates a gallery of animals that act realistically, but also manages to be so three-dimensional. There's no dialogue. We get engrossed in their communication through sounds and get so much information in nods and movements and their eyes. I keep getting fascinated by the world that the director has created. Is this the distant future? Are they drifting near Bhutan maybe? Have the humans perished many years ago? It drifts away from photorealism we've seen in Hollywood and goes for a simpler style, which I loved. Number 8, Know All the Land. Truly a gut punch. A brave filmmaker who tells the story of how much the Israeli forces have destroyed the villages. It never stops to pain me how often they destroy the schools and homes. It's very well documented, which also has the peaceful moments between Basel and the journalist Yuval, where you get a sense of the community in Masferiyata, the Palestinian place on the West Bank, which is constantly demolished by the Israeli occupiers, solely because they don't want the Palestinians to expand. The film portrays it all without feeling like misery porn. Number 7. The Seed of the Sacred Fig. Mohammad Rasulov is such a brave filmmaker, creating this tense political thriller. The film follows a family with a father who works for the Iranian government. We'll learn later on what he actually do, and his distant relationship with his wife and 2 daughters. I had my doubts in the first act with the intercutting of the cell phone videos, which was a bit unstructured. But in the end, it pays off. The film's backbone is the Iranian protests. It's quite brutal to see how women are treated, and that improper use of hijab can get you killed. It's a very misogynistic society over there. The film has an interesting transition into a more genre-specific thriller, more and more towards its third act, but I don't think it ever loses its humanity. It might be slightly on the nose on its message and criticism towards the government, but it's never overbearing. Number 6. Memoir of a Snail. Sometimes the most human films out there are the animated ones, and Adam Elliott creates an achingly beautiful film. One where you can feel the fingerprints in the animation. I'm a big fan of Mary and Max, so I was already giddy about this one, and it did not disappoint me. The story is about Grace, a shy girl with a cleft lip and a hobby for collecting snails, and we observe the trials she faces from childhood all the way to adulthood. This animation style is right up my alley, and the whole thing was so wonderfully sad and quirky. I was totally engrossed in Grace's journey of identity and her isolated life, riddled with snails. Number 5. The Brutalist. A movie that at pre-intermission takes you back to long epics like Jan Troell's The Emigrants, David Lean's Dr. Zhivago, George Stevens' Giant, or Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America, wonderfully shot in its crisp VistaVision format. It's like a movie that is carved out of marble in its authenticity and cinematic language. There's a grandiose scope and story earning that 15-minute intermission, a story about a Hungarian architect coming to America and is discovered by a wealthy industrialist. I agree that it falters a bit in its final act, but I don't think it's as weak as people say. I think it deconstructs a lot of the great man stories that it tries to sell. It builds up and then tears it down. The second half is darker. It has a composition like Full Metal Jacket and the myth of the American dream, the story of a man in the land of the free, is not as simple. There's a sad portrayal of capitalism, greed and destruction. This is hinted at the very beginning of the film, when we see the Statue of Liberty, but the image is turned upside down. The film has more similarities in the tone of The Power of the Dog than grand epics like The Godfather, but it's still simply impressive. It's old school cinema. Number 4. Anora. The story about a 23-year-old stripper who falls in love and marries the son of a questionable Russian family, and then shit hits the fan and they want it annulled. What a fun movie. The first, second and third act have these 3 distinct colors, tempos and tropes, without feeling like 3 different movies. You'd expect as soon as the Russians or Armenians get in the film, you would get the classical intensity with machine guns and hokey acting, but there's no weapons or predictable events. I was so happy to see how there's a new voice to the final work. Anora manages to create an exhilarating dynamic. Everything from the spoiled brat to the very three-dimensional Anora. Sean Baker is extremely talented to highlight people in so-called low-life positions and elevate them to great heights, more than objects, and with one surprising supporting character being the only one who never sees her as an object, turns into a great exploration of character and development throughout the film. I loved what it said about the transactional nature of sex and a lack of true love and intimacy. Number 3. Nickel Boys. A form-defying masterpiece about 2 African-American boys that get sent to an abusive reform school in the 1960s that got me hooked as soon as I heard the premise. I'm already a fan of immersive filmmaking in the style of Son of Saul and Hardcore Henry, and to see that it sticks to a first-person point of view, alternating between the 2 leads without feeling like a gimmick, then they completely sold me onto it. I had no problem falling into their world, and the isolation as well as the tight aspect ratio and how it transcends from a first person to a third person, was absolutely genius. The soundscape is incredible, where the sensory experience takes over. We can feel the stressful breath, we feel the tension through the sounds. I didn't have the built-in knowledge like what most of us had in the zone of interest, which is a good comparison to it, but I think we get enough clues to follow along. I enjoy the fragmented style, it's so visceral, especially with the juxtaposition of the archival footage and the film, such as the achievements for mankind that was the space race, while at the same time you had Nickel Academy on Earth. A shame it doesn't have a cinema distribution here in Norway. Number 2, Hundreds of Beavers, the silliest movie of the year. I know it says 2022, but this had just a couple of film festival screenings before its main release in 2024. It's about an Applejack salesman in conflict with beavers. Hilariously insane and creative. A live-action Wile E. Coyote film with a lot of inspiration from Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. It's a small budget film, but the way they used green screen here says so much about their creativity and hard work that was done to pull off this style. It shows how a classic 1920s slapstick comedy could look like today. It did feel a little bit repetitive at times and could be slightly shorter, but I truly appreciate the immense passion here. The universe sets up a lot of Looney Tunes rules that pay off, how this prop and location work in this universe, how the protagonist learns the function of it, which might not be how we perceive to work in real life, and find out how to work it and improve it. Every detail serves another, as if every scene has a clever gag to them. And my favorite film of the year is The Substance, a complete off-the-rails body horror experience about a fading celebrity played by Demi Moore, who gets fired due to her age, uses a black market drug to create a younger version of herself. It's way too on the nose and unsubtle, perhaps treating the audience as those shallow, brain-dead fools that are glued to exercise videos on TV, but that's exactly the point, especially with the overplayed executives and the sound design, with its overly poignant use of food and colors. It knows what it serves us. I love so much about this film, like the doctor adding the substance into her yellow jacket, like the opening shot of the egg plum, the pure white room of the packages, as well as her bathroom, the set design, the use of the yellow street sweeper, and so on. I love the Neon Demon for all its same problems and would categorize this one in the same vein. But it has the emotional core brought by the duo of Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. That mirror scene, for instance, or how she feels like society has rejected her. It says a lot about body fixation in society. The Substance is a wild, explosive ride about beauty, self-worth, and youth, seen through the eyes of someone that completely excels in the body horror genre. Thanks for watching. I will also do a video about my Oscar predictions when the time comes.